Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Roto World Football Show on Thursday, September 26th, 2024 is the year. Week 4 is the week. We're going to preview the entire slate, including the Vikings at the Packers, scrolling down, the Bengals at the Panthers, the Commanders at the Cardinals, trying to see the games that I starred, the Seahawks at the Lions. It's kind of pointless to just call out 4 games because we are breaking down all of them.
This is my favorite part of the show, where you just keep listing games.
Yes. We got the A's at the Cardinals. We got Michigan at Georgia Tech. We got the Islanders at the Predators. We got it all, folks.
Now that's shocking.
We have every game. I think it's
who does St. Louis SC play this week?
Guadalajara as part of one of those cups that we do.
Yeah.
Guadalajara, I think, folks. No.
I know the cup you're talking about because the MLS takes a relatively lengthy break during the middle of summer where they play the Mexico teams or maybe the South American teams. I don't know exactly what it is.
Last year, St. Louis City SC, not at all a mouthful, got absolutely dominated by the Mexican powers known as America. That is the best team in America. Is Mexico is called America. The best team in Pittsburgh right now is the best team in Pennsylvania right now is the undefeated Pittsburgh Steelers, Denny Carter. One reason is because of the play of Justin Fields, which of course means someone named Russell Wilson isn't playing. I've been joking about how they absolutely love to give Russell Wilson more time to heal. And Denny, this week they kind of just came out and said it. That's the whole gig. That's the whole thing. The whole plan.
Sounds like someone within the organization gave a little ring to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler and told Mr. Fowler that Russell Wilson's calf injury, which was once described as not serious and kind of minor, is now, quote, no joke, according to Fowler. It is a very serious injury, and I would appreciate if you stopped laughing about
it. If the Steelers make it to like 6-0 or something, like Russell Wilson doesn't have a leg anymore. He's a man with only one leg
coming off.
So what Fowler goes on to say is that the injury gets worse with every 6-yard completion that Justin Fields because that's what Arthur Smith and Mike Tomlin are looking for, are a bunch of 6-yard completions. Yeah, it is getting funny at this point how they are either creating cover for a long-term Justin Fields situation here in Pittsburgh, or they are maybe helping heal the ego of Russell Wilson, who was named the starter. Remember, was named the starter until he was not named the starter.
Also, didn't this calf injury stem from him pushing a sled? Wasn't that the original impetus of this injury?
Right.
So the best case scenario is professional football player pushed a sled and the team didn't realize how grievously it injured him until in week 4 they continued to update us with how it gets worse. So that's the sort of generous scenario to give, let's not, they're not doing any sort of politicking. Russell Wilson just can't push a sled anymore. That's the generous scenario.
Why is a quarterback pushing a sled?
Well, Denny, listen, I talked about this with Sigmund Bloom. He brought it up this week on the couch, where I may or may not have been. You may or may not. Should check it out. It was like, sure, there's no actual reason for the quarterback to be doing the sled in 2024, but also maybe a good weeding out process if your quarterback does the sled once and instantly gets hurt. Like, all right, maybe a guy shouldn't be the quarterback anymore. You think you could just do the sled one time without getting hurt. But Russell Wilson in absolute shambles, that there are no direct flights from Pittsburgh to Germany, by the way, where he needs some of those secret Christian McCaffrey stem cells. This has not been reported anywhere, by the way. I'm still just making this up completely about Christian McCaffrey. But,
we do need to get him to Berlin immediately, though.
Please get him to Deutschland. Russell Wilson, if you're listening, it's your last hope. The Green Bay Packers expect to welcome back Jordan Love this weekend for a surprisingly critical early season showdown with the road-tripping Minnesota Vikings, Kyle Dvorchak. The Pack had stunning success with a run-heavy approach during Love's 2-game absence. Is there any concern for fantasy managers? They maybe keep that ball rolling until Love has re-proven his knee health and kind of do like a hybrid system of like the Love-centric system we expected to begin the year, and just like the rolling ball of Butcher Nye's rushing attack we've seen the past 2 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be very reasonable for them to say that our superstar, paid like a superstar quarterback who we pinned all of our hopes on is coming back from a serious knee injury, and we're not going to throw him to the wolves right away. I think that checks out. On the other hand, they have had a minus 21% pass rate over expected into Malik Willis starts. They are playing football. I mean, they were playing football, understandably so, as if it was the 1850s. Will they continue to play like that? Absolutely not. In week one, they were just above one or just above 0 pass rate over expected. So slightly above the expectation. They also lost Love late in that game anyways. I do think they will understandably be so. We can't come back and criticize them next week. I know we're going to want to. We cannot come back and criticize them next week for having a minus 5% pass rate over expected and a 10-point loss to the Minnesota Vikings. It's okay to protect Jordan Love in this upcoming game, but it will not be the same absurdly rush-heavy approach that they play with Malik Willis. And I think really the addition of Jordan Love to the passing attack, the passing efficiency, plus an improvement in pass rate, albeit I'm not going to project it over 0% pass rate over expected. That is going to be really good for the passing output of guys like Jaden Reed, maybe Christian Watson, who we'll get to.
Oh, yeah. He's back.
On Wicks and Romeo Dobbs.
You want to know how I know Kyle is a Zoomer? He thinks that minus 20% pass rate over expected is from 1850. That's the way they played in 2007.
And I say they didn't even play football yet in 1850. If Kyle had ever read one history book, like any Zoomer anywhere had ever read one history book.
If it didn't happen before the 90s, arguably it didn't happen.
Arguably.
Period.
Speaking of the 90s, the 1890s, I've been reading a biography on Ty Cobb, and
Interesting.
boy, did these old-time baseball players like to fight. And you, sir, and pointing at people at the stand, it's like fighting fans constantly, not a joke.
Well, they couldn't fight online, so they had to do it in real life.
We will settle this with fisticuffs, sir. Like,
And it's crazy how many times the fans won those fights is the thing. Like the fans were roughly the same level of athleticism.
The fan easily knocks out Sam Crawford. I'll Google it if you don't know who he is, Denny. Denny, the Zoomers don't know who Sam Darnold is, but they might now. They have to know now. He's been the beneficiary of immaculate game script, though, during his hot 3-0 start for the Vikings. What might happen if that is not the case in Green Bay, where the Vikings are road underdogs, Denny?
Yeah, so we don't have much of a sample at all of how the Vikings would operate with Sam Darnold if things go sideways, because Minnesota has led for all of 6. I'm sorry, Minnesota has trailed for all of 6 offensive snaps all season, and I would guess just because it's the Kevin O'Connell system that they would remain pass heavy, and they've been well over expected as far as pass rate goes. In situations so far, I don't think that changes much here. But I will say that Darnold and the Vikings are eating up too high coverage. He's third best in fantasy points per drop back against too high coverage right now. So, if the Packers do get a lead here and drop into like a shell coverage look, it might not be the problem that it is for others, because Darnold does that weird thing where he throws it into the high coverage, and Justin Jefferson scores a 90-yard touchdown.
97-yard touchdown. I don't expect the approach to change. I do just wonder about the effectiveness. Again, this is the guy who's famous for seeing the ghosts, and if he's in more obvious passing situations, people are probably tired of hearing me harp on this, but he took 7 sacks the past 2 weeks combined in games like we're never even in doubt.
Yeah.
The dude's taking 7 sacks, like that kind of game script. I do wonder what we're going to see when they're actually trailing. And the Packers can, quote, pin their ears back.
I think it will be an interesting test if the Vikings. But the thing is, the Vikings defense has been so good that it has afforded Darnold to stay out of that negative script.
And we'll see what happens. This is maybe the most fascinating game of Week 4, Vikings and Packers. We're going to learn a lot. I feel like that includes the Green Bay pass catchers. Kyle, anything to say about these receivers as Jordan Love returns, or? We were waiting for this to shake out when the season began. Then we got the weird false start in in Brazil. Now we've had the 2 games with game script that is not coming back, even if it is run heavy. We know the Malik Willis game script's not coming back. Anything to say about the pass catchers upon Jordan Love's return?
Yeah, I wouldn't, like you said, it's really hard to interpret the data, the quote data from these first 3 weeks, because week 1 was relatively normal. They literally played in a different country, and it's the most normal game we have for them. And the other 2 weeks were starts from a quarterback who just does not get an offense designed around him, like we'll see with Jordan Love. With that big caveat, Christian Watson's 74% route rate in week 1 dropped to 64%, then 60%, and he's been targeted on just 13% of his routes. I don't know how you can trust a guy whose routes are declining and doesn't get targeted on his routes. On the other hand, I very much want to trust Jaden Reed, who had a 17.5 ADOT in week 1. He was a chunk, like big play, chain mover, like electric type of player. The past 2 weeks, ADOT's below 0, running back or less level of target depth. I think that'll change. I think that is a clear product of we need to scheme our best guy touches, even if it comes behind the line of scrimmage. So I'm still trusting Jaden Reed, albeit on a not perfect route rate, to say the least. And after that, I'm kind of waiting for things to shake out.
I thought the stat you were going to say with Christian Watson was going to be good. Then it got really bad.
No, he's splitting routes with Dontavion Wicks, and he hasn't been that electric playmaker since his rookie season.
You throw out the pass. Honestly, you even throw out week 1, a different continent on the worst field I've ever seen. I'm just resetting to summer expectations for Christian Watson. This is actually not a bit. Like, I'm still treating him as like a boom bust, high upside wide receiver 4. Bust, of course, implying he could have a quote 0 ball. But I'm back to square one with Christian Watson. They only do positive Christian Watson stats around here. The humble New Orleans Saints meet up with the chastened Atlanta Falcons, a somewhat surprising road underdogs, in my opinion, Denny Carter. But so it finally happened. The Saints' Death Star got stopped in week 3. It just took one coach to be like, yeah, whatever, just don't follow the motion. Like, they'll be totally helpless then. Anything concerning from that week 3 game against Vic Fangio's Eagles? Or is this just perhaps the risk the Saints and fantasy managers are running with this high variance Clint Kubiak approach?
Yeah. So just to review, this Saints offense is and has been and will continue to be very run heavy, right? So looking at their drop back rate over expected, they were -4 in week 1, -12 in week 2, -11 in week 3. I think there were some major concerns last week in the fancy Kubiak system that we were lauding in week 1 and 2. So they basically completely abandoned play action as soon as they got down. They only ran play action on 30% of their snaps, which is less than half of the rate that we saw in week 1 and 2. Derek Carr was pressured on 44% of his dropbacks. He was 3 of 11 when pressured against the Eagles, and he's traditionally not been good against pressure. So that should come as no surprise. I will say
not been good against anything, but yeah.
Yeah, I think in the goal,
in the sense that he's traditionally not been good. Period. Done. Space.
The caveat here, and the saving grace perhaps for Carr, who is going to be without his starting center this week, is that Atlanta, the defense kind of stinks. Has the second lowest quarterback pressure rate, so maybe that won't be a problem so much for Carr this week. I did want to mention, as far as the Saints offense goes, I know Rashid Shaheed gave you a zero ball, as the kids say, in week 3. That was not fun, although completely predictable, and the reason why he was in regression files last week. But 63% air yards rate last week, and 21% of the targets. So it's not like he wasn't on the field or not seeing the ball. But this is just the profile, right? I mean, you're going to get 20 fantasy points, or you're going to get 0 or 3 from Shaheed.
Derek Carr is going to be in real trouble if teams start taking the Ryan Tannehill approach. We're near the end of the Tannehill days in Tennessee. I was like, just stop respecting the play fakes. Just sell out as if it's going to be like, just stop acting like you're going to get burned by this. Sell out and just sack him for a thunderous sack every single time. That's what they started doing against Ryan Tannehill. I pray that's not what they're doing to Derek Carr, Kyle. What do we say this Falcons offense is after 3 games? Because I frankly don't know. Yeah. We had week 1 where Kirk Cousins didn't move. We have week 2 and 3 where he is moving more. Still not really looking like vintage Kirk Cousins. Not really cooking with Kyle Pitts or Drake London. Bijan Robinson is cooking. What do you say we're seeing here with this Atlanta Falcons team?
I actually feel like this is maybe the team I know exactly what they are the most after 3 weeks. They are running with reckless abandon. They have, in their most, quote, pass-heavy game, a -9% pass rate over expected.
Yeah.
They just want to run the football, and they play 3 wide receivers and no more. I believe the past 2 weeks, it has been a 100% route rate for Darnell Mooney, Ray McCloud, Drake London, and not a single other player getting on the field for 3 receiver sets. Kyle Pitts' route rate has still been strong, although week 1 was 100%. Past 2 weeks has been close to that 80%. That's still good for a tight end.
What about his yards?
I was going to say, is he still good as a tight end? Is a different question entirely.
Was he ever good? Kyle.
He seemed like he was good as a
He
rookie.
had 1,000 yards as a rookie. I guess who else did that? Me. It's real easy, actually.
Oh, I
I
didn't
was
know
gonna
that.
say, I think only one other player ever has, or maybe
It
two.
was maybe Jeremy Shockey. Oh, sorry.
No, I think it was like Ditka or something.
Ditka did do it as a rookie, famously.
Wow.
Actually,
I
That's
know, yeah.
amazing.
Maybe there was one other one. I think Ditka was one of the ones who did it. And you say I don't know history, you dork.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Come
all
on,
right.
give him a break.
Fair
But
enough.
no, to be clear, I'm sort of have a very tenuous grip on is Kyle Pitts good. To take us on a tangent, there are a lot of times where I think we should confidently update our priors, having seen new data. The Kyle Pitts data over the past few years doesn't look very good. On the other side of this game, Chris Olave, every single peripheral stat is like, this dude's a superstar. I'm never giving up the ghost on Olave. I'm kind of willing to give it up on Kyle Pitts, if I'm being honest.
Olave too, man. I really just think you can argue this isn't even a bad thing. I just think he's settling into that Amari Cooper zone where he's just
might.
not quite as good as we think he is. The usage is great. The production is quite often great, but we're just not going to get that true superstar
Maybe.
outcome from Chris Olave. Denny, what about Bijan versus quote unquote versus Tyler
Yeah.
Algier? Some people are trying to make this a thing. I just think it's kind of what Kyle said, where they're so run heavy that Bijan can't take every touch. Is that what you're seeing?
Right. I mean, we were talking about that on the show, I think last week. It's like, I don't really know what Robinson drafters expected, but eventually, like, your guy has to come off the field if he's on one of the run heaviest teams in the league, which the Falcons are. Yeah. So Bijan Robinson, 48 carries to only 19 for Tyler Algier through 3 weeks. 70% route rate for Robinson, which is really strong for a running back. 11 targets to only 1 for Algier. I will say, look, obviously Algier shines in all the metrics way over Robinson. But that's not. But no one wants to hear that.
We don't, Denny.
No,
In
we
fact,
don't want to hear it because they come in. He's been wearing down the defense, Bijan, and then they're sucking air at like the 22-yard line. Yeah, of course, Tyler Algier is going to gain 4 yards.
I think you are what the kids call a hater. Both guys have 6 red zone rushing attempts. So if you want to quibble, if you want to get a little anxiety ridden about Bijan Robinson, there you go. You got 6 for each, but otherwise there's no split.
We're not worried about Mr. Bijan, but then he said, I guess always something to kind of keep an eye on. But I think over 80% of the snaps in 2 of his first 3 games for Mr. Bijan Robinson.
I will say Algier will absolutely cook if Robinson goes down.
Stop trying. Don't even put that out there.
I'm just saying, like, you can't. What I'm saying is you can't start Algier, but you got to keep him on your bench because if things go sideways, I'm telling you that he's not going to agree. Top 10. He's a top 10 option.
He would be, but yeah, we're not visualizing that scenario. The duct tape together. I almost said St. Louis Rams. Rams arrive on the windy shores of Lake Michigan as roughly field goal underdogs against what I would like to call the chaotic Bears, Kyle. The Rams kind of remade their offense on the fly in week 3, aka 26 Kyron Williams touches after they just didn't commit to the run game at all the first 2 weeks. Are there really any Rams pass catchers we can trust right now? What kind of game plan are we expecting to see for what is forecasted to be a low-scoring affair?
Really interesting. In the first 3 weeks of the season, I think maybe there are a few data sources that had them with 1 or 2 12 personnel snaps. Otherwise, PFF had them as 0. Like, quite literally, actually, it was week 1 and 2. We're into week 4 now. Week 1 and 2, 0 12 personnel snaps is what I found. They were playing 100% of their snaps with 3 receivers on the field. This is, albeit a bit extreme, it is generally what Sean McVay does. He has 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and 1 running back, and he plays them all as often as he can, in part because you get out there and you get an advantageous matchup, and you keep playing that matchup. In week 3, for what feels like the first time in years, if his entire Rams tenure, they actually leaned on their 12 personnel look more than ever. They were in 12, I believe, on over a third of their plays, including passing plays. Not too surprising, but that let Colby Parkinson and Demarcus Robinson run 90+% of the routes. Tutu Atwell was the receiver 2, running 80+% of the routes. I feel very confident in Demarcus Robinson continuing to play that role, continuing to pile up air yards. Regardless of what you think of his talent, the volume is there, and his quarterback is solid. He's not the best quarterback, but you are getting relatively quality targets at a reasonable ADOT on all the snaps. I do feel like, man, does Sean McVay love to bench Tutu out of nowhere? We saw it last year for Demarcus Robinson, no less, is that once he figures out that there's a player who can replace Tutu, he does seem to do that. So while his 80% route rate last week, very strong, that could just flip on a dime out of nowhere. I do not think that's the case for Demarcus Robinson or Colby Parkinson, who are just playing every snap out of necessity. And they're relative. I mean, Parkinson, he's just
Would be nice if Colby Parkinson ever did
I know.
anything whatsoever.
I know. It's what we kind of have seen with Cade Otton in the past, where like, yeah, you run all of the routes. I don't know if you're really talented enough to earn targets. I will say Cade Otton, when I make the comparison to Cade Otton, he's been competing with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin for targets. And albeit Colby Parkinson's competition for targets was weak last week, it remains incredibly weak going forward. When your competition is DeMarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell, Jordan Whittington, and Tyler Johnson,
Please,
I have to project you for some amount of targets. So
get the ball once, Colby. Get the ball
I
one
know.
friggin' time. Listen, we are starving out here. Some of us are literally dying because of the tight end crisis. And why don't you catch a ball? You ever thought about it? You ever thought about it?
One time.
One time. Denny, we saw signs of life, speaking of dying, from the Bears in week 3. This is a plus matchup in the Rams, or at least so I am told. More Caleb Williams momentum. I know it pains you to talk about Caleb, who you declared a bust after week 1. Does he have momentum now heading into week 4?
I said he's bustish. Okay. Yeah, look, this team is going to abandon the run, and for good reason, because they're not built to run the ball. They have a really
horrible roster construction.
Yeah, bad offensive line, bad running backs. There was a report actually from Jeremy Fowler saying that Roschon Johnson might get a look as the lead back or get more opportunities this week. And who can blame them? I mean, DeAndre Swift's averaging less than 2 yards a carry. There's a hilarious cut up online of DeAndre Swift just seeking defenders to run into in the open field. It looks intentional. It's
not like a bit. It's like he is a magnet drawn to the physical contact of defenders, but that's when there are holes for him to make chunk gains, make 5, 6, 10-yard gains, and he seeks out the physical, I have to blow through this 290-pound defensive lineman, and of course they take him down for a 1-yard gain that should have been 9 yards.
Yeah.
And that's how that's how in the past his coaches have always found reasons to not play him, and that's how in the spreadsheets, all of the spreadsheets say, man, the moment you give this guy more than like 6 carries, he just falls apart.
So there's an argument to be made that, rush yards before contact is an offensive line stat. And if so, then the Bears are in trouble because they're 31st in that category through 3 games. So I think we could just see like a bunch of dropbacks for this Bears team. They ran 90 plays last week. Rome Odunze was a clear beneficiary, almost 200 air yards. He had a big game, over 100 yards and a touchdown, and that works. We're taking that. But he actually kind of ran cold. He's in the regression files as a guy who ran cold. Like he got unlucky last week. It could have been crazy. So that, I think that's a good sign. Keenan Allen remains out. I don't think he's practiced this week.
He is practicing. Keenan is like a weird variable here because we don't know what to do with this.
Yeah, I mean, he changes everything for Odunze and for Cole Kmet, who I wanted to mention. He ran a route on 41 of 55 dropbacks for Caleb Williams last week. Only 17 routes for Gerald Everett. Kmet saw 11 targets, caught 10 for 97.
Cole Kmet's not good.
Well, he's better than Gerald Everett. I will concede that.
I think even us Cole Kmet haters conceded that.
Yeah, you did from the jump. You're like, well, he's definitely better than Gerald Everett.
So, but I really think getting back to Keenan Allen, his absence dictates Kmet's usage, right? And so if Kmet is not as usable if Allen comes back.
I feel like it does and it doesn't. I think it's more about the Bears are going to abandon the run game. And the approach we saw, 56 dropbacks from a quarterback who was struggling, is really not how you draw it up. That's what Caleb Williams had in week 3, but I just don't know what other choice they have.
Right.
Kind of reminds me of the Cowboys last year where everyone's so excited about Pollard, and very quickly we realized Pollard just didn't have it. And the Cowboys did the exact same thing and went from being a miserable below pass rate over expected team for years to being at the forefront of pass rate analytics. And I don't think it was entirely out of choice. It was because the running back who they had pinned all their hopes on turned out to just not be the answer. And that is the exact same setup we have in Chicago.
So this volume can fuel Odunze, can fuel DJ Moore, perhaps Cole Kmet, perhaps. It could be fun for fantasy if they truly do abandon. Just give you one stat about what kind of opportunities available. Only 2 quarterbacks, Deshaun Watson and Caleb Williams, have over 1,000 air yards through the air, passing air yards through week 3. That could be
great
fun.
company there. Yeah, wow. Keenan Allen is really, really like the key to this entire thing. And I was trying to like look up what I thought would be a cool stat because Rome Odunze commanded 11 targets in week 3. So, I wonder how many times a rookie receiver this century has commanded at least 11 targets in the first 3 games of his career. And it turns out it's happened 55 times.
I was going to say Neighbors got like 18 2 weeks ago.
He's done it twice this year. Puka did it twice last year.
Yeah.
So 55 times in 24 years is not that
If you found the air yards, I had him with over 200 air yards. If you found the air yards in his first 3 games, that might be something because he had like just the ones that were completed gains of 40-something, 20-something, 17, 14. They were like looking to him to move the ball deep downfield.
DeAndre Swift, by the way, that's called a Miles Sanders, where you're seeking out contact. And the Eagles thought they were moving on from that. By the way, Denny, you mentioned Jeremy Fowler for the second time. You're supposed to say the aforementioned Jeremy Fowler. That was you get like fined if you don't say the aforementioned. By the way,
I did. I messed that one up. We'll fix that in editing.
We'll give producer Adam some real quick time to edit that right now. We'll be right back after this. It's a battle of AFC powers in Baltimore, Maryland, when Josh Allen and the Bills head south to face Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Coverage of the game begins at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock this Sunday evening. That's going to be a really good one. And I was like really praying we were talking about it right now, and we are. Producer Adam's smart like that. He put it right before the game. The Bills have looked like the best team in football, while the Ravens sit at 1-2. Baltimore is still the home favorite, though, in this one, Denny. The Ravens' a super mega heavy run heavy approach from week 3 was the talk of the fantasy town, very much including from you. Was that a one-off against a horrible Cowboys run defense or a potential new trend considering their pass catcher limitations? This may stun you. The Ravens are somehow once again short on viable pass catchers.
Yeah, really amazing. It's something we haven't seen since last year. So it's something that keeps happening. Yeah, the Ravens 19% below their expected dropback rate last week. Just to give folks an idea of what that means, because I say that a lot, but I just want to emphasize it with this Ravens Cowboys game from last week. So their dropback rate was expected to be 47% last week, okay, which is quite low. Their actual dropback rate was 28%. So that was just crazy run heavy. They had a lot of success. It turns out having Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in the same backfield can be quite good. And I have a tough time thinking, because what happened, and we talked about this on Tuesday's show, but just for folks who may have not heard that for whatever reason, they largely ditched the RPOs for the run for the read option play, right? Which is we saw a lot in like Lamar's first MVP season, that sort of play. If they lean on that going forward, it means unbelievably good things for Derrick Henry, and it means unbelievably bad things for everyone else in this offense.
So it turns out an 8-yard rush is better than a 2-yard Zay Flowers catch. Who knew?
Get ready to learn divisional loss to the Chiefs, buddy.
Stop it. Stop it. Yeah. And again, Kyle saw me make the face. I was told Derrick Henry wasn't good, things of that nature. Turns out he's amazing. Who knew?
Well, we did say that he would run for 200 yards.
You did. I know you did. It keeps falling back on this technicality that yes, he said he would be amazing. But
yeah, both Benny and I have done that all summer too. I think I at one point was like, yeah, am I ready to lose to 16 touchdowns, 1,800 yards, Derrick Henry? Yes, but am I ready to watch them lose to the Chiefs in the divisional round? Also, yes. Both can be true. Like, both will be true. Henry's going to run great in this offense. Do I think it makes them beat the Chiefs? I mean, we have some evidence on that already this year.
Speaking of losing to the Chiefs in the divisional round, Dalton Kincaid. Nice. What is the latest? Dalton, he will lose 2 fumbles in the divisional round. They'll feature him for the first time since week 7. We don't care about week 7 right now, though. We only care about weeks 1 through 3, Kyle, where we're not liking exactly what we're seeing from Dalton Kincaid. Denny's given us some details this week on the podcast. What do you have to say on Mr. Kincaid?
Last week was, I guess, a step in the right direction in terms of usage. He had a negative ADOT in the previous week that went up to 12.12 last week. That is true chain mover, sort of pseudo number one receiver, tight end type of stuff. What we see from guys like Mark Andrews and George Kittle is they're not just schemed the short area stuff. They function as a number one receiver, and that was the hope for Dalton Kincaid. The ADOT last week showed that, and not only did he improve the ADOT, he was targeted on 31% of his routes, earned a not bad 17% target share, accounted for a third of Buffalo's air yards. All really strong market share metrics. I believe he went 3 for 41 and a touchdown. I was looking at all the market share metrics and was like, oh, he erupted. It was a Monday night game. I'm sure I was asleep or something. It's been a long weekend. Got to catch up my sleep, and I wake up and see all the spreadsheets saying that he had a great usage level game, and I'm like, oh, he must have crushed it. It was fine. It was a good game. He had a good fantasy performance. Tight end is a weak position, and this performance in terms of his usage was more than enough for me to be like, we have to keep him in the tight end one ranks. I want to be a contrarian and be like, rank this guy outside tight end one. Absolutely not. But the Bills are a run-heavy offense in which Dalton Kincaid has shown one viable game. I still feel like it's not going to get him into the top 3 or top 4, albeit that is such a low bar to clear. I guess you could still rank him there if you wanted to.
I guess another thing I might cling to with Dalton Kincaid is that we just haven't seen the Bills truly pushed yet. We thought we would in week 2 against the Dolphins. That game didn't end up competitive. They were in week 1 by the Cardinals. I've already actually memory hold that completely. But it still was not a great Dalton Kincaid game. But so if it's another game, what we hope is really competitive here on the National Broadcasting Corporation, and say like the Bills actually have to play 60 minutes, and the Dalton Kincaid this production is still lacking, I think it will be time to begin the signal fire to panic. And,
we'll say Ravens are the second most extreme pass funnel defense. I'm going to have them in the funnel report on Friday. And the Bills showed a willingness to lean into the pass a little bit against the pass funnel Jacksonville Jaguars on Monday. So we could see a little bit of an uptick in pass volume that would be good for someone like Kincaid.
Bill Belichick would have already been the head coach of the Jaguars this week, but the hurricane hitting Florida has unfortunately delayed his flight, canceled his flight, and he's not yet able to buy a home in Duval. The 49ers suffered the worst loss of the young season in week 3, Kyle. We're talking about a real howler. No way you can lose that game to the Rams. Juwan Jennings went burr, though, because, again, Kyle Shanahan just all he cares. He doesn't care about winning. He's look at what I can do with my number 3 receiver. Bet you didn't think I could get 175 yards from Juwan Jennings. Everyone was saying I couldn't do that. I wasn't even thinking about that. Right?
No one
did it. Congratulations. Surely you won the game, right? Nope, didn't win the game. What is the state of this banged-up 49ers offense? George Kittle is back at practice, albeit in a limited fashion on Wednesday. What are we telling people about the 49ers and their latest science project, Juwan Jennings?
I mean, as far as Kyle Shanahan, like you said, he's getting away with it, is having Brock Purdy at the top 3 in the EPA standings. His getting away with it is not winning the Super Bowl. He hasn't gotten away with it ever in that sense. Getting away with it in terms of making an offense that doesn't have any right in terms of talent to be a top 2, 3, 5, whatever offense. He did get away with that. Purdy averaged 9.7 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and he did it by throwing exclusively to his best receiver and Brandon Ayuk, that being Juwan Jennings, Brandon Ayuk, who combined for 73% of their targets. And I will say, if I told you Brandon Ayuk saw 47% of the first read targets, as in when they were getting the ball to the guy that the play was designed to go to, about half the time that was Brandon Ayuk. He was targeted on 29% of his routes. He earned 33% of his targets. I told you all that. And I said, and check this out. A 49ers receiver caught 10 passes for 170 yards and 3 touchdowns. You would say, I'm gonna bully the bank examiner. I'm gonna show him this stat line, and it was Juwan Jennings. All that being said, all those stats were Brandon Ayuk played an alpha number 1 receiver role, and the fish got there with Juwan Jennings. As long as they're targeting Brandon Ayuk in that manner, I think we get there more often than not. I think we ran bad last week.
The fish have never not gotten there. Brandon Ayuk won. Everything you just said, sure, it sounds like Brandon Ayuk's horrible game was his own fault and had nothing to do with Kyle Shanahan.
That's one way to put it. Yeah.
Guess who I'm going to blame? Kyle Shanahan, because it was his fault. Denny, do we care about anything with the New England Patriots until Drake May starts, or can we just already move on?
I don't know. I mean, look, you have Demario Douglas, Pop, as someone calling him, nine targets last week. Hunter Henry was still out there running a lot of routes to Pat's chagrin. No, he's still startable.
He's actually not.
It definitely is a top 12 tight end.
Top 12?
Yeah.
Hunter Henry?
Who are you starting over?
Pat, name 11 other tight ends.
Yeah, I can't name 11
I
tight
know
ends.
11 tight ends. Hold on a second.
Uh,
No, man, I've got Hunter Henry ranked here at tight end 21. If you want to know.
Oh, that's too low.
Starting Colby Parkinson over him, starting Zach Ertz, Noah Fant, still starting Isaiah Likely over him. Conk Daddy, Schultz, Taysom Hill, Josecki. These are just none of those are even in the top 12. Hunter Henry, man, just don't do it. You got to think bigger, man. You got to think bigger.
Yeah, think bigger with Tyler Conklin, one game over one catch this year.
Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki, come on.
He's like third in tight end targets.
I know. He's leading the position in yards per route run.
How many targets does Taysom Hill have?
Who cares?
I mean,
I
is he playing?
thought I banned Taysom Hill talk from this
podcast. So I didn't see any routes run by Ramondre Stevenson last week. That was curious.
That was a weird one.
I think they just pulled the plug on Stevenson after the game got away, and Antonio Gibson kind of took over from there. I wouldn't worry too much about it. I think it's clear that they want Stevenson to be the centerpiece of this offense. And if game script is a little more neutral, which honestly, I don't see this as a blowout. So I think that Stevenson will be okay.
You don't see the 49ers blowing out the Patriots?
No, I don't.
I'll be honest. I do see one of the best teams in the NFL destroying the worst quarterback in the NFL.
Say, listen, I'm
a
again. Certified card-carrying member of Shanny Hater Nation, but this will be a blowout.
I'm just telling you that this offense can't go Burr without CMC and Kittle and Debo.
Hopefully. I mean, they threw for like 300 yards and 3 touchdowns last week.
The Rams stink, man.
Hopefully Kittle's plays. I mean, that was this. I wasn't exaggerating. It was the worst loss of the season by far. It was so bad I forgot to even mention they were facing the Patriots.
This doesn't save anything for the Rams. The Rams are still going to be horrible.
Yes. Fresh off a badly needed road victory in Tampa Bay, the Bucks. I don't know. What am I? What?
You got this. Don't worry. You got this, buddy.
What the hell am I talking about? Okay, fresh off a badly needed road win in Tampa, the Broncos head to New Jersey as touchdown plus road dogs versus the Jets. Denny, was there anything actually encouraging in the Broncos' Week 3 performance?
I'm sorry. What game were we talking about?
Broncos at Jets.
Broncos.
Did anything good happen with the Broncos when they won their game last week?
Okay. I was distracted by the smooth transition we had there.
The dulcet tones.
Yeah. So, I think we did actually see some good things from the Denver offense in Week 3. So, Bo Nix had a season-low time to throw per PFF, which means that basically he was getting the ball out more quickly. Like he wasn't just patting the ball and running around trying to do cool Caleb Williams stuff. He was just getting rid of it. He also rushed on 9 of his 40 dropbacks, which is a pretty high rate. I wish we could get that rate out of Anthony Richardson, honestly, but he rushed on 9 of his 40 dropbacks. Bo Nix did not take a sack in Week 3 after being sacked 5 times from Week 1 to 2. So I think that was things are looking up, more so for the Denver offense going forward. And I think that Bo Nix becomes somewhat interesting in like super flex formats, because if he's going to rush 6, 7, 8, 9 times in a game, he instantly, whether he throws a touchdown or not, he instantly becomes interesting.
He's not interesting in this game against this elite Jets defense on the road, I'll say. And the huge problem there is Bo Nix, he's not a dual threat because they don't have a passing threat. So he's just a single threat.
I hate that. That's a good point. I hate that.
As far as the offense goes, I wrote up Cortland Sutton in the regression files because he remains a despair yards all-star. I actually stole that from someone on the X platform, formerly known as Twitter, and
it's good thievery, though. I like it.
I don't have the name. I'm so sorry. It's a reply guy. I love you, buddy, but I'm going to continue to use that despair yards. And Cortland Sutton, listen, it's eventually going to hit, and it's going to be great. It's going to be 75 yards and a touchdown, and everybody's going to celebrate.
Pat, that's PFF's number 1 graded deep passer in Week 3, Bo Nix.
Oh, interesting. Curious, Pat.
I'm curious.
He went 2 or 3 with some good throws.
Josh Reynolds didn't even do anything. He had a touchdown to Cortland Sutton. Speaking of washed, who couldn't get 2 feet in bounds. Kyle, the Jets impressed versus the New England Patriots because that's just what teams do. But they now face this really tough Broncos defense. Give us the latest on the emerging Breece Hall, Braylon Allen storyline.
I still think it's Breece Hall's backfield, but man, Braylon Allen is forcing the issue by being extremely talented. It's no indictment of Breece Hall, but Breece Hall ran 16 times, 54 yards last week. Braylon Allen, hot on his trail, 11 for 55. It was 37% of the team's carries for Braylon Allen. That was a season high for him. And it wasn't just because they blew out the Patriots, which, teams generally should do, but Allen's rushing total had... Yeah, according to Denny, we have one team that won't do it this week. I and you beg to differ, but that wasn't why we didn't get garbage time Braylon Allen on their final drive. The Jets, it was only 1 Braylon Allen carry to 3 Breece Hall carries. So he's PFF's number 1 graded running back right now. He's doing well in all the advanced metrics. I think some of that was coming in advantageous situations, but it's what we've seen with these previous superstar running backs in the past, where they're like our favorite backup. Tony Pollard is the example I called him in the waiver wire column. We're going to keep calling for him to get more touches. I don't know how much that actually happens, but it's enough to at least make the path to Breece Hall RB1 overall a bit thinner. I still think he has a certain chance at getting there, but if you make me place my bet now, it's going to be Saquon Barkley. Whereas if you tell me CMC is out of the picture in week 1, Breece Hall, I'm putting all the chips on.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true anymore. I still think he's a good top 5 bet, but I don't think he is the favorite to be the RB1 overall.
I still think the Braylon stuff, my take that I'm sticking to for now is this, that the Jets have so few places to funnel quality touches behind Garrett Wilson that Braylon Allen, it's more about that than it is Breece Hall. Not that anyone's suggesting it's about Breece Hall. People are suggesting it's because Braylon Allen's good. But I just think it's because, listen, are we going to give the ball to Allen Lazard, a rehabbing Mike Williams, Tyler Conklin, or this really good young running back?
Yeah.
I think it's almost as much about the Jets passing game weapons as it is Breece Hall. That's still concern. I still think it's a long range concern more than a short term.
I agree. Like I said, I think Breece Hall, if you're making me redraft the running backs, is still the RB2. But I'm going to say I'd take Saquon over him rest of season now.
Me too. Yeah. We should do that on the show. Do a redraft.
Yeah, I wouldn't confirm a ton of my priors.
I think I would be less worried about Braylon Allen if he just was not part of the passing game, but he is. He's running routes and seeing a few targets. So that is an issue. I did want to mention the aforementioned Jeremy Fowler said that Mike Williams will be more involved going forward, and he almost caught a touchdown last week. So he could one day be a thing for fantasy, maybe this week.
Mike Williams loves to almost catch touchdowns.
Yeah, I know. He loves it.
Denny, again, I've only ever known this man as Tyler Beatty. He again went on video this week saying it's Tyler Bidet, though. Tyler Bidet now officially signed to the Broncos 53-man roster, not just practice squad promotions. How real are things getting for Javonte Williams here, who's been almost as bad as DeAndre Swift?
Well, yeah. I mean, if DeAndre Swift didn't exist, Javonte Williams would be, by the metrics, per all the analytics, the worst running back in the NFL. So I guess he's just never going to come back from that knee, which was a very serious knee injury. And I have to accept that. But Bidet, or whatever he's going to be called after he has a good game this week, he had 9 rushes for 70 yards in week 3 against Tampa. He had 6.2 yards after contact per rush, which is really, really solid. Javonte still led the backfield and pass routes. Jaleel McLaughlin barely ran any last week.
Yeah,
so
no good setup for him.
Yeah, McLaughlin is not a thing. I honestly, I would not be surprised at all if Bidet is the RB1 headed into week 5 in this Denver backfield.
It's so unpredictable, but I sort of think it is happening. Again, 1 quarter, closeout mode, blah, 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 whatever. Broncos weren't taking that victory for granted, by the way. And it's not like they were up by 25 points. Right. I don't think it's meaningless or garbage time or anything like that. And it was the best quarter by a Broncos running back all season. I do think it is a very real developing situation. Also, by the way, developing Garrett Wilson, slow start, probably going to continue against Pat Surtain this week. Aaron Rodgers is blaming bracket coverage for Garrett Wilson's slow start, which honestly scans, which also plays into my Braylon Hall theory. The 0-3 Cincinnati Bengals. Man, I can't. What did I wrote the word trade?
You have You have Archduke Franz Ferdinand on this? I'm not sure how that applies.
I wrote the word trave. I left the L off travel. The 0-3 Bengals travel to face the resurgent Panthers as modest 4.5-point favorites, Kyle. The Bengals aren't winning, but they're making the EPA machine go very burr. Is T. Higgins back to every week wide receiver 2 status? What about Mike Gesicki as a potential tight end 1? Denny's worst nightmare.
I like how you point out that they made the EPA machine go burr last week, is that they didn't also make the actual points machine go burr. They scored 33 points. Like,
they didn't score 39. That's what they needed.
But both teams in that game there was no scamming. When you say the EPA machine went burr, I think, Trevor Lawrence was 7th in EPA and they lost by 45.
No, they had a good EPA week in week 2, though, is what I'm saying. We're basically it's not matching the results.
They were bad in week 1, though. The EPA machine did not go burr in week 1, which was the loss to the Patriots, I think. So I think week 3 was the points machine catching up to the EPA machine, which is good. I do think it's also good that T. Higgins was out there for nearly every snap last week. He only saw 6 targets. Andrei Iosivas saw 7. If you really want to believe that Iosivas out targets T. Higgins going forward, go for it. Be my guest. I will be doing no such thing. The moment they put T. Higgins out there for every snap, I think he's roughly back to full health. I'm going to bet on him to be a boom bust, but boom bust wide receiver 2. I feel very tepid about Mike Gesicki, who is still only running last week 54% of the routes. That's up 8% since week 1. They're scaling his reps up, quote. But a lot of teams fluctuate their reps with Mike Gesicki, and then at one point it just all falls down because he's Mike Gesicki. He has been really good. I don't mean to demean him. 4 for 47 last week, but 7 for 91 the week before that. He has a 2.6 yards per route run that's nearly top among all tight ends. I will say 4th-round rookie Eric All, who had a really good final season at Iowa, comes in, immediately starts getting targets, has 1.9 yards per route run. Frankly, they have more invested in him than they have invested in Mike Gesicki. It just feels like such a tenuous grip because that's the role Mike Gesicki has played in recent years is maybe he pops up for a good game, but it's just that. He pops up and then he returns to the fringes of relevancy at best. So you can trot him out there as a tight end too, but the rug will get pulled one day. I feel somewhat confident in saying.
Mike Gesicki, the ultimate everything looks bad if you remember it player. Yes, Denny.
Hey, real quick, in every Bengals broadcast this year, the booth has mentioned Eric All as a guy they want to increase usage for. So I think Kyle's on to something there, and he's worth monitoring.
I think it's just more Zach Taylor crying and coping in the production meetings. What's a positive about this team? He's like, do we have any good young players? Eric All, yeah, we want to get that guy more involved, I think. Denny, we've already talked a lot about the Carolina Panthers this week, so you can keep it short, but give us the short of the Panthers offensive reinvention under Andy Dalton.
Yeah. We have to get to more games here. If you want like a more thorough breakdown, Tuesday's show, we talk about it a lot. I get into the nitty gritty. I also wrote about it in the regression files. Much higher pass rate over expected, more passing on first down, more creative play calling, lots of short passes to Deontay Johnson and Adam Thielen, who's now out.
More yards, more points, more happy fans.
More first downs, more throwing beyond the sticks. I mean, just everything, right? It was going burr big time for the Panthers. I will say with Thielen out, I think Xavier Legette, who, by the way, is the odds-on favorite to change the pronunciation of his name if he has one good game.
Well, he already has. No one said
he has?
It's Lee. No, since the summer he's been saying it's Legette.
Okay,
and that was after a terrible training camp too. So
it was after a really good press conference. So that's how he changed.
Well,
all of his press conferences are good. To be fair, he's awesome.
We're going to be calling him Legette after this week because I think that he will see a significant uptick in routes and
it's Jonathan Mingo.
It could be. But Legette could be very good, I think.
Real quick, Kyle. Zach Moss is not really producing, but it seems like he's increasingly consolidating the work in the Bengals back. Chase Brown is still looking good, but buys are coming up, injuries are mounting. Are we getting to the point where we might have to drop Chase Brown despite him looking kind of efficient and explosive?
I mean, he had a season high in touches last week. That was only at 9. He set a season high in his percentage of the team's carries last week, but that was still below 40%, I believe. The thing
Moss is playing too many passing downs is what I feel like is
Moss
really
is playing almost all the passing downs.
Chase Brown, yes.
Yeah, but they trust him in pass pro. He is a good pass protector. He's a replacement-ish level receiver, but if you're
sub replacement and everything,
I kind of feel I don't want to be too mean, but he's had 2 of the worst drops I've seen this season as a running back. He's got 1 yards per route run, like 1 on the dot, which is in the fringes of replacement level. I think Chase Brown is better than that, but if you know pass pro, you know the system. I guess I get why your coach would keep you out there. You kind of had all my nerd metrics summed up in your just like general statements. Chase Brown still looks electric. You watch him play, you see the spreadsheets, and he looks like a guy who can house call it on any play. That doesn't matter too much if he's averaging 6 or 7 touches. I do think last week getting a few more reps, albeit in a very high-paced game, maybe that's the only reason, is enough for me to give him 1 more week on my rosters. I am not starting him, though.
1 more week on the rosters makes sense. Week 5 is when the roster crunches really begin. The 0-3 Jaguars arrive in the exact wrong city against the Texans team licking its Vikings wounds. Denny Carter. We'll get to the Jags in just a second, but let's start with the Texans. Why have they been such a fantasy disappointment so far? I mean, this has maybe been the most disappointing offense in all of fantasy football, even though they're 2-1. What do you think's going on with the Texans?
All right. So I looked into it powerfully before the show, and I wanted to see if Bobby Slowick, PFF Bobby, has gone
fraud B. But yeah,
I wanted to see if he's gone fraud mode.
You know what both of the F's in PFF stand for? Fraud and fraud again.
He's not. He's not gone fraud mode. He's over expected and pass rate over expected on first downs and overall. So Bobby's still doing the right thing here. The Houston offense is seeing too high coverage at the 3rd highest rate, about 60%.
Throw it over it. Let's do it.
Of their dropbacks. Well, they're not doing that so far. So I do think Stroud is being forced to do the Mahomes thing where, you check down, 13 play drive for a touchdown, that sort of thing. And that's not really what they were doing last year. Now, CJ Stroud himself is struggling with pressure. He's taken 11 sacks on the season. He's being sacked on 30% of his pressures, which is way higher than his 16% rate last season. The Vikings had him in a blender from start to finish last week. This is a way easier spot, a way easier matchup, and it looks like Tank Dell is not going to play. So I think that he will just funnel targets to Diggs and Collins. It looks like a Diggs nuclear game, honestly.
Interesting. Yeah, Tank Dell's report Thursday afternoon. He's unlikely to play. Kyle, are there any positives amidst just the ongoing nightmare for the Jaguars where they needed to show, even against a tough Bills opponent, they needed to show signs of progress in week 3, and they instead did the exact opposite?
Well, Trevor Lawrence has been good on the deep ball. He's PFF's number 1 graded on deep ball throws.
PFF down bad.
He has. Have you guys seen the PFF sack discourse? Because Lane Johnson didn't know there was a snap, so he just unintentionally gave up a free sack, and fans have been going to combat over it. It's been one of my favorite PFF discourse in a long time, if I'm being honest, which is probably doing a good job running cover for Trevor Lawrence being their number 1 graded deep thrower. This is much more empirical. He just does have the most deep completions. He has either the 1st or 2nd most deep yards, and he is 2nd in drops from his receivers and 1st in drop rate. Once again,
so tired of this.
But those are the good things I could come up with. I was digging into what if we split his stats this way? Can we find stuff? If I really believed in it, I'd be like, oh, he's the 3rd quarterback in EPA and he just ran bad. That's not true. He hasn't played particularly well. I still think there are just some strengths of his game that they're not enough, though, is the thing.
Yeah, and a guy who just needs to be elevated more. He's a guy who's going to need a creative coaching staff.
I agree.
He very much does not have that. Texans backfield.
He can drill Rashid Shaheed 50 yards downfield if Rashid Shaheed is completely uncovered. He's not getting that. Get him a Kubiak.
Joe Mixon's still not practicing. Damian Pierce still not practicing. Looks like another week of Cam Akers for the Texans, which did not go very well last week, but also a horrible game script the entire time. Right. Cam Akers, you can probably go back to the streaming well. Maybe plug and play RB2 well, if we're being honest. Already moving on seemingly from an injured Skylar Thompson, the Dolphins are holding on for dear life as narrow home favorites against the Titans. Kyle, how would Snoop Tyler Huntley change things if he is indeed the starter? I don't think this is official yet. Things seem like they're trending towards Mr. Huntley. Snoop Connor, I think. So towards Mr. Huntley starting on Monday evening in Miami.
I was going to say, there is a Snoop Connor. I think I've actually made that mistake before because there are only so many Snoops. It would be better. I want to be clear that It would be better. In the past 3 years plus 3 games this season, 72 quarterbacks have 150 dropbacks. Skylar Thompson ranks literal dead last among them in EPA per play. Tim Boyle ranks 65th. Tyler Huntley, a respectable 49th, a below average starter, but an average-ish backup. That's that's the best I can conjure up, is that I think it keeps Tyreek Hill on that fringe wide receiver 1-2 range and puts Jalen Waddle back on the menu as a fantasy option, but neither of them are anywhere near what you drafted them to be. Tyler Huntley is just enough to keep them on the menu. He is not, I don't think he's going to save this team, albeit Skylar Thompson, I think, is the least efficient, least effective quarterback employed by the NFL right now. So,
yeah, he is quite bad. I did not realize quite how bad he was, even though Denny was sounding the alarm until I saw some of the highlights. Like I said, you're doing try. Kyle, I accidentally gave you both questions for this game, so I'm gonna. Hopefully, you're ready for this one. Are we getting near the Will Levis end stage? What is the latest on DeAndre Hopkins versus Calvin Ridley?
I kind of think we're getting near. At some point, it will happen. I'm going to say at some point, Will Levis will not be the starting quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. He's 30th in PFF passing grade, 30th in EPA per play, albeit I think the pick six wasn't as hilariously comically bad as his other 2 hilarious highlight reel turnovers in the past 2 weeks, or in weeks 1 and 2. It was still another bad mistake that we literally heard Brian Callahan 2 weeks ago on the sideline screaming at him mid-play, "What are you doing?" And just for reference, last year, the guys ranked outside of PFF's top 30 in their passing grade after 3 weeks were Kenny Pickett benched, Zach Wilson benched, Desmond Ridder benched, Bryce Young benched at the beginning of the next season. The guys who are, per the film watchers, performing as poorly early in the season as Will Levis is, didn't make it through the end of the season last year, with Bryce Young being an exception. He had a much higher investment from his team and only made it 2 weeks into his next season. So I do think it's probably, I would just take the under on does he finish the rest of the season as the starter. As far as DeAndre Hopkins goes, it was good to see him be productive, but he still was running just about 50% of the routes. As much as I think he's a good player, I still see that in his game. 50% of Will Levis's routes is not a starting fantasy option.
Denny, sorry you didn't get to talk about this game. We
That's
regret
okay. My feelings are not hurt at all.
We regret the air. We have to take a break to sort this out. We'll be right back after this. Find out if the United States can continue its dominance at the President's Cup this week when golf's biggest stars face off with the Royal Montreal Golf Club. Watch Thursday through Sunday on NBC Golf Channel and Peacock. One of those patented days where I cannot talk. And according to producer Adam, the United States is taking it to the rest of the world in the President's Cup. So if you want to see the stars and bars, take some names. NBC Golf Channel and Peacock. The Commanders are the talk of the NFL town after their Week 3 stunning of the I cannot speak today, of the Bengals and Jaden Daniels, a superstar rival, Denny. That's why I'll ask you about their opponent, Arizona, first. Is Marvin Harrison Jr. forcing his way into the weekly top 10? I mean, he's forcing his way into the top 10, but it's kind of explain why.
Yeah, I mean, I think his profile remains a little bit on the shaky side. Harrison is averaging almost 17 air yards per target through 3 games, which is just way, way too high to expect any sort of consistent production. Basically no slot usage. He's not getting any of the easy button stuff.
Well, okay, this sounds like what you're saying is the receiver has finally just decided to, quote, be awesome. And instead,
this sounds like an argument against
targets.
Justin Jefferson. Oh man, Justin Jefferson picks up 20 freaking yards on every play. It's too long.
He doesn't do any of the loser scam stuff.
So yeah, he's not getting any scam stuff, and I think that so he's gonna have blow up weeks. This is a blow up week against a Washington defense line, the second highest drop back success rate. Only the Cardinals are worse, by the way. So this could be something of a shootout. But yeah, Marvin Harrison has 3 targets on the season between 0 and 9 yards. It's not exactly what you want to see.
I like it.
I think it's a bad.
I would simply be awesome.
I think it's a bad profile. I think it's a bad.
Nah, I'm with Pat. Hey, if you can just rack up 20-yard gains 5 times a game, we'll take it. Of course, I'd also loved him to add to that 3 for 9, but who cares? Just go out and be awesome, dude.
I'm thinking,
dude.
I guess I'm thinking of Malik Neighbors, the greatest rookie wide receiver of all time.
Of course,
So,
if I could have a receiver profile in terms of usage, not a joke, like unironically, Malik Neighbors is top 2 or 3. I mean, he is on pace to literally set the record for targets in a season. You can't do that at a 17 ADOT. But
no one's trying.
If we're no one's trying. If we're just setting the bar at top 10, guy who sees 40% of his team's targets and 80% of the air yards is a good runner up to 90% and 99%.
Yeah, so he's probably a top 10 play, and especially in just an unbelievably plus matchup against the Commanders.
He does need to start supplementing the downfield stuff with the short stuff, but I just wish more teams would go back to letting receivers be awesome instead of trying to make them like ATM robberies. Kyle, how possible is it that Washington opens up the playbook after Jaden Daniels' just amazing week 3 performance? And why is the answer no, that they won't open up the playbook?
I mean, I have a lot of stats on the fact that they did open up the playbook. They went from a -3% pass rate over expected in the first 2 weeks to a +6%. Jaden Daniels had a 17% deep throw rate last week. It was 9% in his first 2 weeks. A funnier one is Terry McLaurin went from 4% of his snaps lined up out wide, coming on the right, to 19% last week. They just moved around the formation a little bit. And
Cliff moved the guy? That's actually humongous.
I know. He got a little bit of slot work too, and he got about 20%.
You know what? Sorry to interrupt. That is because Cam Taylor-Britt said Cliff doesn't move guys.
Yeah.
Like finally someone just said it publicly, like someone Cliff would actually care about instead of like a blogging nerd. Like a player's like, hey, he doesn't move the guys. We love that.
No, that absolutely could be it. And the reason I agree with you is because all of that is indicative of the team, as you said, legitimately opening it up. It wasn't just a fluke that they got someone open on a long play. They played a different style of football in week 3 than they had in the previous 2 weeks. I have a lot of data to say that Cliff plays a specific style of football, and one game where he doesn't play that just doesn't entirely shake me off the fact that he is who we think he is, albeit, as Denny said, it's a great matchup either way, whether or not they play a little more deep passing heavy, whether or not Terry McLaurin runs 3 routes from the right side of the field versus 15. I still think it's a great matchup. You're still playing all of the guys you expect to be playing. Over the long term, though, can I give Cliff a ton of credit as a changed man? No, I don't think so.
Just keep letting him go psycho mode, man. Jaden Daniels no one has exuded this much superstar aura in so long. Just let him go psycho mode. Denny, real quick, Brian Robinson, really good setup with Austin Eckler out, the really high game total. He's been pretty good so far. He was not good in week 3, but setting up for a pretty nice week 4 for Brian Robinson, is it not?
Yeah. Excuse me. The Cardinals can be had on the ground, allowing a top 10 rate of yards before contact per rush. So it is a great spot. And I let's see, the Cardinals profile as a top 5 run funnel. I'm just trying to remember what was in the funnel report here. And so I think there's a good chance to actually we see Washington lean pretty hard on the run if they can. If things get sideways and they have to chase touchdowns in the second half, think that changes. But Robinson is in line for 20 touches here, obviously.
Please, just this one time, be a changed man, Cliff Kingsbury. Just this once. You're supposed to come back from Thailand a changed man.
We're going to need one Cardinals defender to be like, it's college offense. It's garbage.
Well, there might be a time difference between Thailand and here that's throwing him off by 4 weeks exactly of NFL football. Please, God. Because like you said, Jaden has that superstar power. We just need a coach who cares.
I just realized why the playbook's going to be open, but remain open this week. We somehow totally neglected that it's a Cliff revenge game. The revenge to end all revenge games.
It is revenge.
Revenge Cliff. You wouldn't like Cliff when he's angry. The Eagles arrive in Tampa Bay. Somehow, I feel like every game is a Tampa Bay playoff rematch. Somehow they've played everyone in the playoffs like 6 times the past 4 years. The Eagles arrive in Tampa to face a reeling Bucs squad as only 2.5-point road favorites. I thought it was a little light, even though the Eagles have not been very impressive either, Kyle. The Bucs in week 1 looked like they were going to carry over all their 2023 momentum. They have not done that at all the past 2 weeks. 2 really disappointing performances, not quite as much against the Lions, I guess. But is this offense on fraud alert? The Bucs, Baker Mayfield is like 30 total completions over the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to. Yeah, they are on fraud alert. We'll put them on fraud con 3, right?
Right
Fraud
in the
con works
middle.
from 5. Yeah, 5 is very low fraud levels. 1 is full fraud levels. Put him at fraud con 3. I do think, at least from Todd Bowles' comments about getting Mike Evans more involved in the offense, they're hopefully trying to do the right thing, which is make explosive plays. I think that's
Get the old guy more involved. We got to get the old guy more
Well,
involved.
Chris Godwin isn't particularly young these days anymore either. I think he's only 28 or 29. So
Mike
I will
Evans being
say-
treated very unfairly.
I think so, because what we see this year is they just aren't hunting for the big play, which is kind of Mayfield's entire thing last year. It was just, I don't know, Mike Evans down there somewhere. And you know what? Big man was down there somewhere very often, and it worked very often. He went from an 8.6 ADOT last year. This is Baker Mayfield in a clean pocket to 5.2 this year. You know, it's a very meaningful difference in how the team is designing their plays. The Bucs are 30th this year in deep pass attempts. His ADOT on first read throws is down as well. I think a lot of these are Chris Godwin stats. I think Chris Godwin played very well this year. When you make the entire offense out of Chris Godwin, you're going to struggle to find those explosive plays that Baker Mayfield did extremely well last year. And Todd Bowles saying he needs to get Mike Evans more involved makes me feel that they understand that that's an issue of the offense.
This actually goes back to Marvin Harrison and the Cardinals. Like, just maybe let your offense be awesome and don't get distracted by Chris Godwin checkdowns. Like, listen, I love Chris Godwin.
Yeah, especially when you have a great player. It's okay to be like, hey, the Chiefs don't have MVS, we're not going to ask you to be awesome in 2023 or 2022. It's okay to ask Mike Evans to be awesome because he is.
It is. Anytime there's a check down, they take it, and we never get to see anyone be awesome anymore. Danny, the Eagles beat the Saints, but Jalen Hurts did not look great in the process. How concerned are we? I had people text me like Jalen Hurts looked like bad. I was about to say like a cuss word, but a real bad word that refers to
stinky. Pat was going to say stinky.
I was going to say he looks like ass. People were saying that he was not playing well, but I mean they won the game and he played well in fantasy. And I thought, how concerned are we though about Jalen Hurts apparently failing the eye test last week?
Yeah, I mean, he's failing the nerd test as well. I mean, he's up there on like completion rate over expected, but it's with a lot of safe throws. He's 20th in dropback success rate, which is really bad, especially for a rushing quarterback. Like that metric was like made for rushing quarterbacks. And he's failing at that. So I would think it has something to do with not having AJ Brown or maybe possibly now Devontae Smith after that horrific shot that he took last week. I feel like you're starting him and you're hoping for double-digit rushing attempts, but even on those, he's been terribly inefficient. I think that his ceiling is capped right now until this team gets healthier.
I feel like he's kind of a bad matchup for this like really injured Bucs defense, even without the pass catchers.
Yeah, sure. I could believe that, especially since thankfully they've stopped running Hurts to the outside, like toward the boundary. He
wasn't getting the edge that well. He was not getting.
He's a QB power guy. He is a QB power guy through and through.
Look, this sounds funny. It sounds like a bit, but Jalen Hurts is very slow. He's just slow.
Well, I don't know about if I go that
far. He gets tracked down by like 380-pound linemen.
The concern for Hurts is, of course, the injured skill core. Yeah, Devontae does not look like they're playing. He's playing. AJ Brown does not look like he's playing. Injury to watch with the Bucs too. Rashad White, Bucky Irving did not practice Thursday with a hamstring injury. Apparently claimed he's still going to play. Bucky all 3 games has outrushed and outcarried Rashad White. So it's kind of been in slow motion, but it seems like this is happening. And RB2 Rashad White could be in its last days. And the 3-0 Pittsburgh Steelers arrive, and 1-2 Indianapolis is roughly 2-point road favorites. Denny, I'll ask Kyle about Anthony Richardson in a minute. Was this maybe a spot where Justin Fields could finally have a QB one day? He's been kind of toying with having a QB one day. He has not done it. As also a Najee Harris smash spot against the really, really bad Colts run defense. They did not look good until they faced DeAndre Swift.
I feel like the Steelers offense is designed to prevent Justin Fields smash spots. And, he had 6 rushes last week for 6 yards and a touchdown, which works, I guess. But overall, his rushing totals have been good. He's getting nothing out of it. I guess that could change against a really bad running defense with the Colts, and they're still banged up. DeForest Buckner, I don't think is going to play. But yeah, I mean, you would think Najee Harris would be in a good spot. the Steelers are going to definitely establish it like it's 1978 here. I mean, that's for sure. So this is good. This profiles as a quick game, I think.
It does.
Ugly, running everywhere. I think the Colts will try to keep it on the ground as well to try to keep Richardson from making more mistakes, and Jonathan Taylor's running hot as well. Anyway, it is a run heavy game, but I honestly think Justin Fields is still just a super flex option.
Yeah, Pat, I have plans on Sunday afternoon, so if you could assign me this game, it'll be done by 3:30. I'll get my blurbs done by 4:30.
I will say with Justin Fields, the rushing opportunities have still been there. I think he's maybe a little unlucky not to have busted a long one or two or have more touchdowns. And even in this confined Steelers environment, like there's only so long you can confine that kind of rushing threat.
My vibes-based analysis on his rushing production has always been that it's these incredible broken down scramble plays, and it's not getting as many opportunities on those types of attempts where the defense is not prepared for you to run the football if you are dropping back 10% below your expectations.
Say what you will about Arthur Smith. He's actually running an offense, unlike what the Bears did the past few years with Justin Fields. So I don't know, maybe it's bad that they're actually running an offense.
Yeah, Justin Fields thrives in the chaos of a non-offense.
So is Anthony Richardson still quote unquote that dude? We were promised being that dude, and he's only been so one time in 3 games. It's looking a little bleak, not completing any passes in the short to intermediate range of the field. I
don't know why, but I thought you were saying he's looking a little bleep, since we were just talking about words we can say on the podcast.
Just can't speak today.
I mean, he is who we thought he was. I don't know if he's that dude, but he is who we thought he was.
You thought he was that dude? You promised that's all you said all summer. He's that dude. He's that dude. He's that dude. He's him. He's that dude.
Well, he's big. That's kind of what I meant is he's tall. And for someone who's I'm not a very tall guy. Mostly when I say like, oh, that dude is him, I'm like, he can ride all the roller coasters. He's big. He's really big, in fact. Wow. So, we are getting what we thought we were in that coming out of college. It was he has a very nice deep ball. He handles pressure well. He's not the guy who scrambles at the moment of pressure. No. He stands in the pockets and throws.
Come on, man. Learn to scramble. Learn to make one read and take off, man. Yep. You're not supposed to be going through your reads.
Nope, don't want him doing that, but that is exactly what he's doing, is he is progressing through the play and then sailing a pass that should be a 5-yard completion 20 yards over the guy's head. That's what he did as a rookie, and that's what he's doing in his second year. He is a really good deep thrower, albeit I think the problem with being a really good deep thrower is the variance on that is so high. Like, he can complete 10% over expected on his 40-plus yard throws. Your expectation on a 40-yard throw is not to complete it very often. So that's still a low completion rate. And really the nail in the coffin from a fantasy perspective is that he has 8 designed runs. That's as much as like Bo Nix. Or he's averaging 6 carries. That's as much as Bo Nix. He has 8 designed runs. That's as much as Daniel Jones. He is getting the rushing volume of a spry, shifty quarterback and not a dude who is as athletic as Derrick Henry. And that is really, if you don't have a backbone of 10 carries, 50, 60 yards, and it's more like 6 for 30, given his passing profile, which is not good. Pat, I said I would rank him as a QB1 earlier this week, and you said no. I think you were right.
Yeah, it's just he's on probation for now. When you were talking, I honestly thought like the Colts needed to attempt more deep passes, like scare the defense even more. Like really, like since the short passing game isn't working, go for the home run more often, which they're probably getting the mindset of we got to go for the home run less often because they're killing drives.
Yeah.
The drives aren't sustaining with the short balls.
Totally
do
agree.
The deep ball more often. Do more old fashioned NFL.
Colts are seeing 2 high safeties at the highest rate in the league, unsurprisingly. And I will say this, Flacco awaits. I'm being serious. You guys think it's a joke. It's not a joke. He's playing. He's playing this year.
Yeah, not with an injury, and not absent an injury, he's not playing. Real quick, Denny, Colts pass catchers post Josh Downs return last week. Anything out there? It's kind of all in a holding pattern, isn't it? Right now?
Well, look, I mean, yeah, it's ugly. Like, okay, like Alec Pierce runs all the routes. Okay, that's 20 routes. 20. Okay, he sees 2 targets, catches 1 for 44. Congratulations. Michael Pittman. I don't think is playable in 12-team formats right now.
Yeah, he's not. He's outside the top 36. I did drop him outside the top 36.
All right, that makes sense to me. Josh Downs, 16 routes on 20 dropbacks. He had 5 targets, caught 3 for 22, ran all of his routes from the slot. I mean, there's just not much here outside of Jonathan Taylor. Like that, he's the whole offense. I could see them becoming so conservative. You got to find a way to not play Michael Pittman this week,
especially in this game where Mike Tomlin also wants to play this game like a bar fight. Like both of these teams want to run the ball 33 times and get out of here with a 17-10 score line, regardless of who wins. So to Denny's point, I don't think there's almost anything to work with almost on either side of the ball. I guess like George Pickens is legitimately the only top 36 receiver in this game. And it's tenuous.
It's tenuous. Yes.
It's getting more and more tenuous with George Pickens, I hate to admit. The Seattle Seahawks head to the Motor City as 3.5-point Monday night underdogs, Kyle. We still have not really seen an amazing game from the Lions, despite a pair of dome performances to begin the year. Are the Seahawks a slump buster or not really? The Seahawks defense hasn't really been tested yet, but is off to a strong start to begin the year.
Yeah, just to give you some numbers to back that up, the Seahawks are number 2 in EPA per play on defense, number 2 versus the passing EPA per play, and they are also number 1 in success rate. And with the caveat, as you pointed out, the quarterbacks they have played are Bo Nix, Jacoby Brissett, and Skylar Thompson. I think they're a far improved defense under Mike McDonald coming from the Harbaugh coaching tree. I mean, we just see success from these guys at every level, at every first name that includes the last name Harbaugh, albeit this one doesn't. He's from the tree. With that being said, I do not think they are the best or second best defense in the NFL, having played, I think, almost certainly the weakest competition of quarterbacks we'll see in a 3-game stretch. Vegas gives this what I would say is a very uninspiring 46-point total, and that's the 4th highest total of the week. So if there was a slump buster in the context of how teams are scoring in the year 2024, 46-point total is a relatively high total. It's a quote shootout for our new standards. Vaguely slump buster adjacent.
Slump buster adjacent. We'll take it these days. That's as good as it's going to get. Denny, what's the latest on the Seahawks' passing game approach where they hit the huge play in the first quarter last week? They go up 7-0 and it's immediately parked the bus against the Dolphins because they knew Skylar Thompson couldn't do anything. Yeah. Why the JSN volatility? Was it just because the game was not competitive last week?
Well, I mean, look, the Seahawks were 12% over their expected dropback rate last week against the Dolphins. So it could have been way worse, I think, for the pass catchers and for Geno. Geno almost got to 300 yards. Look, JSN is probably just not good. And DK Metcalf is really, really good and seeing enough of the short stuff and the long stuff to make him an elite play week in and week out. They're playing the Lions, which are a pretty extreme pass funnel. There's going to be a ton of dropbacks for the Seahawks. And I want to give credit to our analytics king, Ryan Grubb, whose team leads the league in pass rate over expected on first down. Okay. So we are humming on first down. I do think you're playing Metcalf. I think you can play JSN just based on volume. Hopefully he just sees enough targets to kind of gloss over the fact that he's not good.
Well, I think especially Kenneth Walker misses another game. Well, there would have been a lot more JSN targets last week, I must say, if the game had been remotely competitive.
Maybe. But they didn't. It's not like Geno threw 18 passes.
I've never once said that JSN's good because I don't think he's good.
He's kind of small. I noticed the other.
Everyone's small, Denny. They don't make big receivers anymore. When they do, you hate them.
Yeah, exactly. You won't let Marvin Harrison just be awesome.
I do hate a big receiver.
And he's the only big receiver in the NFL these days. So
I love Metcalf.
We have 2 minutes to go through 2 games. No, we're going to get to these final 2 games, though. Denny, the America I grew up in would never have Patrick Mahomes party to a sub-40 game total. And yet, here we are, a really dark day in this country's history. Is the fun just truly dead for both our nation and the Chiefs offense?
Yeah, no, it's so dead. This whole offense is about doing like the mesh thing and then throwing to Rashee Rice. That's the whole offense.
Amen, brother.
And so yeah, look, I mean, if you got Rice, especially at his depressed like July ADP, I mean, you're smoking right now. This is awesome. He's basically like Kelsey plus in this offense. By the way, tune into Galaxy Brains for more on Travis Kelce. And then as far as like the running backs go, like Carson Steele ran 24 routes last week.
Not a running back.
P. Ryan only ran 14. They saw basically the same kind of target share. So I don't know what to tell you about the running backs. They're both kind of useless at this point.
I believe Kareem Hunt's getting elevated for this game too. Steele's usage in week 3 was good. He was out there for all of the short down and distance snaps. He got, I think, 65% of the carries. And as Denny said, he wasn't completely subbed off on passing downs. It was mostly 2-minute drill stuff that Samaje Perine came in for. If all of that was true without any additional context, I would say, like, on the Chiefs offense, albeit the Chiefs offense isn't what it used to be, that is still worth RB2 numbers.
Yeah.
Kareem Hunt addition gives me a little bit of bad vibes for projecting the fantasy points. I still think Steele is playable, but more in that flex role where you understand that you assume some risk there.
Yeah, he got promoted a little too quickly, Kareem Hunt. We wanted it to be the Dalvin Cook thing where it's like finally after 4 weeks they promote him.
Exactly.
Any charges we care about in a game where Justin Herbert, I had been feeling like he wasn't going to play. Kind of seems like he might play, though. Let's say if he doesn't play, any Chargers that we care about.
I mean, you can play J.K. Dobbins just based on the fact that they're going to be really run heavy no matter what. Quentin Johnston, I think if you're predicting kind of a runaway script, then Quentin Johnston could be really useful if the Chargers are forced to throw a lot. But J.K. Dobbins crashed back down to earth predictably last week. I just think you have to keep your expectations in check. You know, Quentin Johnston has benefited from Josh, what's his name? The receiver, Josh Palmer. being out, you know, and so do you guys know if he's is there any way to find out if he's practiced this week?
No way to know.
Who cares?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, you should be running victory laps on Quentin Johnston, honestly, Pat.
Well, I didn't even have draft because it's kind of what do you win when you win. I didn't even end up drafting.
Yeah, what do you win? You win 2 touchdowns a week. It's terrible.
Josh Palmer limited practice on Wednesday, so I will say I think even if Herbert doesn't play, the game's gonna be way closer than it should be, just because of the new
in a
nature
bad
of the
way,
Chiefs.
though. In a way that it's 3-7 at halftime, and I turn it off.
Yes, no, exactly.
Wait, what channel is this on? Is this on a
It's not on NBC. The Chiefs.
Okay,
are on
yeah,
NBC
definitely
last
turning this
week.
off at halftime. Are you kidding me?
No, it's not crap.
And by the way, I teams rush players back too often. If there ever a game where you're going to play injury roulette, it should be this game. This game might decide the division. And if they can get Justin Herbert to even like 65%, he should probably start this game. They really need Justin Herbert.
I don't know.
Final game of the week: Browns Raiders. I mean, I don't know. Browns.
Lots of play
LOL.
volume. Lots of play volume.
Yeah,
That's happening. 50 dropbacks for Minshew. That's what's happening.
I just wrote Browns yikes for you, Kyle. That was your prompt. I don't know what you've made of that, what you're going to do with that, but what do you
No, I mean, it's a pretty appropriate prompt. They put right guard Wyatt Teller on IR. Jack Conklin and Jedrick Wills came back to DNP on Wednesday. I believe Conklin returned last week and immediately hurt again. Actually, other way around. Wills returned last week, immediately hurt again. Jack Conklin suffered a new injury and has yet to play this year, on top of the fact that Watson just doesn't look good in the first place, but give him no help on the offensive line, continue to reduce his talent. He also leads the NFL in passes dropped, which hardly matters. He hasn't played well, but it's just funny that things keep piling on to him to make sure that no matter what avenue you take to can they clean this up? Well, this is still an issue. Can they clean this up? He is still an issue. I don't see, you just have to parlay so many things being right. The offensive line has to get better, but without being healthy. The receivers have to start doing more. Watson has to play better.
Yeah.
I don't see how all of the things happen.
So I just want to emphasize this. Neither of these teams can run the ball. They're both terrible rushing games. It's going to be a lot of passing, a lot of clock stoppages. I'm telling you, somebody's going to get there in a big way in this game. If it's Bowers, if it's Cooper, if it's somebody's going to blow up here.
Denny, you sound prepared to lose a lot of money in DFS.
Oh, I'm so ready. The
Contrarian brain.
The
game you got to
sitting,
stack.
sitting on an unreasonably large chair right outside of my office. He's ready, and I'm going in on this game. I'm stacking the hell out of this game.
How did he even get that chair on the deck? The thing looks too big to carry up the stairs. I know there wasn't a crane in the yard.
He actually needs help getting down.
You're within your legal rights. You do not have to. He got up there. You don't have to get him down.
He's like a kitten stuck in a tree. You don't have to get him down.
No,
you do have to call the
Maryland,
fire
you do.
department.
Dude, yeah, I should have known out there in Maryland with its quote laws.
Yeah,
All
we do
its
have some laws.
Yeah, we've got some fantasy football takes. They're all over our website. And Denny's regression files, and Kyle's 32 facts, and Kyle's start 'em, sit 'em, and my rankings column, and all of our podcasts we've been doing all week. And Denny's Q&A at noon Eastern on YouTube Friday. So just lots of really great stuff on the site. For Denny Carter, for Kyle Dvorak, I'm Patrick Daugherty. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back on the podcast Sunday evening.